Hello and welcome back. We are live. It's Thursday night. It's UFC preview show time. We are here with Harry Powell and Spencer Kite. Sean Sheehan is off doing a little bit of business dealings. He might or might not join us later on. He's keeping us guessing. He's keeping everybody else guessing. But we'll wait and see if he makes an appearance later on. But look at. Takes three to tango. That's not the saying, but we're going for it with it tonight. And there's no other two people I prefer to come on here and speak about Saturday night's fights other than Spencer and Harry. And we're going to get straight into it. But before we do, I want to introduce you guys to our sponsors and head on over to All Real Nutrition at eatallreal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA and get yourself 15% off these bad boys. Get in there, get yourself some protein bars and enjoy them. Good Irish company. Get on it. Eatallreal.com. Code word SevereMMA. 15% off. Alrighty, we're going to be headlined on Saturday night by Amanda Lemos versus Jessica Andrade in the main event, and we're going to go straight into that fight, guys. I mean, I kind of looked at this fight and I was like, okay, this is a time for Amanda Lemos to kind of come in there as a contender in the division and prove herself against a seasoned veteran than Jessica Andrade. Andrade is moving back down. You know, she had a stint up in the flyweight division. Didn't go her way. She's coming back down to give it another go in strawweight, and I'm interested to see how it's going on. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to go straight in. Very, very surprised at Lemos. Time is not on her side. She has to make it happen now. She's 34 years of age. She's got to make it happen. And strangely enough, for me with this fight is that, you know, Lemos coming in as the contender against the seasoned veteran Andraj. But Andraj has 4 years on her. Andraj is only 30 years of age. She has plenty of time left. And I mean, I think guys, for me, this fight is, you know, Lemos' last chance saloon to get to the top, to get herself a title shot. But in other words, for Jessica Andrade, she has a route to the title now as well. I mean, she has a win over the current champ. She has time to get back up there to the top, and she's going to have to get over this test on Saturday night to kind of prove herself back in the division again. I think it's a really decent matchup overall. I'm excited to see it go down, and I'll go to you too, Spencer. I'll go to you first, just to get your thoughts on the fight as a whole and what you expect to see.
I love it as a fight. I mean, as you said, Jessica Andrade coming back down, former champion, 1-1 in her personal series with Rosa Namajunas. The only losses that she has in the division are to championship fighters in Yoni and Jacek and Zhang Weili, as well as Rose. Comes back down just because she was tired of being kind of undersized fighting up at flyweight, which tells you how goddamn good she is, because she went 2-1 and scored 2 first-round finishes, one over Caitlin Chukagian, one over Cynthia Calvillo, and her losses to the champ. So she was undersized, yet still made it to a championship fight because she's that good. She instantly comes right back into the mix at 115. And then from the Lemos side of it, this is the fight that she, as you said, this is the fight she needs to prove that she's a contender, to prove that the success she had last year isn't just kind of beating to the best of her abilities, to prove that there's another level there. I don't know if there is, but I think this is probably the best kind of matchup for her to prove whether there is or not, because you know with Andrade that she is coming forward. She is coming to get you. And for somebody like Lemos, who has great power, who has an ability to, as we saw in the Montserrat Ruiz fight off the back foot, throw those counter shots with power, with angles, land effectively, Jessica Andrade is going to come at you. She's going to give you chances to get after it and find shots that land. And so to me, this is perfectly timed in terms of the matchmaking. It's a great setup for the division. I'm really excited. I just finished writing a little piece about the division that'll come out Friday. It's going to be a really entertaining couple of months at 115 to sort of figure out who fits where in the top of this division starting on Saturday.
Indeed. Before I move over to Harry, Spencer, I just wonder, do you think the timing is right for Jessica Andrade to make that move down? I mean, you know, time is on her side, like I said. You know, and I always love someone taking a chance and moving on up, going to the flyweight division. Like you said, she did very, very well in that division. You know, Valentina Shevchenko is next level. She's elite. There's not too many women out there that can beat her, but she got there. Yeah, she fell short, but I mean, do you think she should have maybe? Does she see our path to the title again? She obviously sees it at 115 in comparison to 125. That's why she's probably made the move down to division again.
Yeah, so a big part of it, she's in Las Vegas now. She relocated from Brazil a couple of years ago now. She's working with the PI. That's helped her get the nutrition side of things and the weight cut side of things kind of really dialed in. It was always a bit of a struggle to get to 115.4 beforehand. I think it's a situation where it's just about that size, right? Asked her whether, you know, Rose winning the belt had anything to do with it. She said, I was happy for her. If it happens, great. It's the same card where I fought Valentina. So it's not like I didn't know it was happening or anything like that. I think it's kind of a combination of things, right? She could stay at 125, and I think she knows that the opportunity is there. If the weight cut for whatever reason feels like it's getting dangerous, feels like it's getting difficult again, she knows she can go up there and continue to be a top 5 fighter there. This feels to her like the division where she maximizes her talents the most in terms of not really being outsized, not really fighting people that have a significant size advantage on her. And so I think this will be a probably 3 or 4 year at the most kind of trip down, see if she can get back to the title, see where she fits, and then figure it out from there. She can go back up, right? The opportunities will be there. She's still, as you said, 30 years old. There's a bunch of younger fighters on the rise that are going to need to fight the Jessica Andrajes of the world and the Caitlin Chukagians of the world. And so she's going to be able to, she's in a really good position to kind of be able to play both sides of this. And she said, I'll fight anybody. I'll be ready no matter what. If they want me to jump divisions, if they want me to go back up to 25, I can make that happen. That's doable. And so I think she's kind of just taking all of her options and weighing them all out. And when she's got a camp, she can go down to 115. If it's short notice, she can fight at 25 and kind of be a top 5, top 10 fighter in both divisions for a while.
Indeed. Like, I mean, as a fighter, it's always good to have options, and Jessica Andrade certainly does. I'm glad you said that. She does have the opportunity to move up if things don't go her way, and I think that's probably the move. You know, she's touched her toes in the water at 125 and didn't work out for her. So yeah, it's kind of like sometimes I feel, Harry, that fighters need a kind of a change up sometimes, maybe to respark their motivation or to have a different goal to work towards. But, you know, coming back down here for Jessica Andrade and having a win over the current champion as well, that's about as much motivation as you need coming in here against Amanda Lemos. The records are far apart. I mean, when it comes to experience, the odds are very close. And I mean, how do you see this fight coming down, Harry? I mean, the records are one thing. Records don't tell the story. It's a pretty close fight, and it's an intriguing fight. How do you see it going down?
Okay, so this is a fight that I'm very, very excited about. You have rightly, I mean, a lot of the points I'm going to pick up on that both yourself and Spencer have said. The first one is that time in terms of tangible age for Andraj is certainly on her side, but fight time and camp time is definitely not on her side. You know, Lemos has had, 11 wins and 2 losses or whatever it is. Andraj has had 22 wins and 9 losses, right? Like that's a very different amount of time in the gym. Now, Lemos' first fight was in 2014, so it's not like she's not been around the game a long time. But in terms of wear and tear on the body and the brain, I think the odds stack heavily in the favor of Lemos, right? Now, in terms of the fight itself, the first read that I made when I watched back Amanda Lemos' fights was that she stands in a very narrow stance. And what she does, everything she does, footwork-wise, she stamps that foot, a marauding foot, an invasive lead foot. And she places it at separate angles, right? Far angles, near angles, middle angles, and everything is to set up you squaring, right? She leans her head hard to the left-hand side. She leans her head hard to the right-hand side. Why? She wants you to swing at her. She wants you to swing. She wants to offer a check left hook. She wants to offer a devastating right low kick. And everything is to just square you up in one position. And when she squares you up, what's there? The right hand. And we know and have seen in multiple occasions how devastating that right hand is. Yeah. Now, what's Jessica Andrade great at? Hooks, right? So this is where my first really interesting question comes, is who wins that initial battle? Both ladies have marauding footwork. I would argue that Andrade is more polished in that we've seen it against better competition. But then if you look at her loss to Valentina, she couldn't get any footwork going because Valentina dominated the outside space and dominated the angles. Lemos is good at cutting angles and creating angles. So it's going to be super interesting to see who takes the center of the cage and who's able to push the other back from a footwork perspective. The next is, does Andrade bite on the leans and the feints of Lemos? Because we know and have seen that Andrade is happy to take a shot, to give a shot, because generally, as you guys have touched on, she feels much better knowing that she's generally the stronger fighter, more athletic fighter, more physical fighter. I don't think that's the case here. I think Lemos is going to give her everything that she can go for in terms of power and just overall cracking shots. So I think that those are the first interesting questions.
Look, yeah, before we get into anything else, let's just touch on what you went through there. I mean, that is a fascinating battle. Where do you see it turning if it's not working out for one fighter or the next, Harry, when it comes to Lemos or to Andrade? Like, I mean,
right.
you'd have to say that Andrade is going to be the stronger grappler, not necessarily. I think she would be able to have that in her back pocket, and she'd be probably more confident in using that as well if she needs it. But do you kind of see her trying to play a game at Lemos, whereas that she'll try and settle her into a striking battle and maybe lure her into against the cage and try and take her down and try assert her dominance in the grappling department?
Very possible. I'm not sure that she necessarily pushes her back to the cage and takes her down if Lemos is winning the footwork battle. But I think if it gets hairy and she feels that on the feet maybe she is getting clipped, the one thing that Lemos does, and the one thing I don't like about it, is when she cracks people, she just picks up the kitchen sink and throws it at them. There's no shot selection. It's just, I'm going to turn my NOS on Need for Speed. I'm pushing the button and we're going, lads.
And that's what she did against Caitlin Chikagan as well. I mean, and you know, if you're not winning the footwork battle, you can just be bullish and just come forward and throw absolute bombs. And that's, sometimes it works for you and it gets your opponent backpedaling. Other times it gets you knocked out. I mean, it's a dangerous game. Obviously, you want to be doing it with your footwork. It's a lot more safer to do it that way. But I mean, it's a fine line here, isn't it?
Absolutely. And for Lemos does exactly the same thing. When she hurts somebody, she dives on them. There's no shot selection whatsoever. So in some ways, they're very similar fighters. Andrade is just, in my opinion, she's faced far tougher competition and far stiffer competition. So we've seen it tested at a far higher level. But I would argue, like you say, that the more well-rounded fighter is Jessica Andrade. And if things get hairy, do not be shocked if we see Andrade start to grapple. You know, she has a very, very strong base, very, very thick, powerful legs. And we saw it with Rose. Look, Rose held on to the Kimura for far too long. Whatever. But to pick up a woman of that size and just jump her on her head as if it was nothing takes an incredible amount of strength and incredible amount of accuracy. So, Jessica Andrade can absolutely grapple. I just think that will be a second resort for Andrade. Her game plan is as you said, footwork, not working. I'm just going to turn into a rhino.
How do you think it's going to go down? Give us your prediction, Harry, and then we'll maybe get a final thought from Spencer.
So I'm going to pick Andrade. The only reason why is I think she's hard to put away, unless you're somebody like Valentina Shevchenko who can just dominate her everywhere. Lemos in the Angela Hill fight was dog-tired about 45 seconds in. She cracked Angie with the high kick. Angie wouldn't go away. Angie was able to keep herself safe enough on the ground. She was able to reverse the positions, and Lemos was tired instantly. You do not want to be tired against Jessica Andrade. You do not want to throw the kitchen sink at her if you do catch her hurt. And I think she will. I think Lemos will land. Andrade gets hit. But I think this is a 5-round fight. And I think Lemos' game plan and the way she approaches 3-round fights is that I get it done in 1, maybe in 2. I don't see third rounds. So I think Andraj probably takes this over 5 or just finishes her late.
Indeed. Spencer, anything to add or anything that you'd like to touch on that Harry said there?
Yeah, I think the piece that's most interesting to me and sort of touching on what Harry said, and I agree, I think it's a Andraj fight to win. I think especially the later it goes. The thing I'm going to watch for and continue to watch for is her body work. She's somebody that does absolutely ferocious damage when she works the body. We saw it in the Caitlin Chukagian fight. I think we saw it in the Cynthia Calvillo fight as well, if I'm not mistaken. She will roast you to the midsection. And if you're somebody whose gas tank is already questionable, is already a little bit suspect, you can be sure she is going to come out there and, yep, she's going to try to knock you out. She's probably going to try to scoop you in the air and slam you on your head. But when she gets the opportunity in tight in the clinch, especially if you're the one pressing forward, it'll be like that Chukagian fight where she needs one to connect and to connect hard. And you're backing up, clutching your midsection, hoping to God that the round is over and she doesn't chase you down. And so I do think, as Harry said, she'll try to be effective. She'll try to be smart and technical and do all the right things. But she also has the ability to be a rhino. And she has the ability to go 5 rounds. And kind of, we saw it in the second Rose Namajunas fight, right? Rose, great early. And as soon as she started tiring, Andraj starts landing more and more and more. I think that's a lot of what we'll see play out on Saturday as well.
Indeed, yeah. Something that I have been impressed with Andraj is that, yeah, sometimes she has kind of looked tired in fights, but always gets a good second win. Sometimes even gets a third win. And I think that's going to be important in this fight. I think, look at harshly saying, I guess, for Lemos, I think, you know, for her to get a chance like this against a former champion in a UFC main event, I think, you know, she might take some solace from that. Obviously, she's going to think that she can go in there and get the win. I honestly don't. I kind of agree with you guys. I think this is Andraj's fight to lose. I think just Andraj maybe gets caught or just has an absolutely horrendous night is the only way I can see her losing this fight. I think, like Harry said, and similar enough to what you said too, Spencer, for me, it's going to be either an Andraj decision or a late finish. And I just think that her extra experience, her championship experience, the wins, the losses, they'll all play a major factor in the main event. And I would expect her to get the win on Saturday night.
If I could just jump in though, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Lemos win this either. Because of the things we spoke about earlier, right? Like I'm absolutely hardline picking Andraj, don't get me wrong. But Lemos' footwork style is interesting. You don't see a lot of people making those mistakes with the cross steps and whatever. She has the power to hurt Andraj. And anything can happen when you have that power, right? We've seen it from Andraj herself when she's being technically beaten, but she's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Watch this, and just destroy someone's midsection, right? So I would not be shocked if Lemos does.
I don't think anyone should be shocked at anyone. Like, I mean, you know, these fights are fucking close, guys. I mean, yeah, you're talking about a main event in the UFC. You're always going to have a well-contested fight unless you're dealing with like just a phenom like Chimaev or somebody like that who has the ability to go in and blow somebody out of the water. And you know, you never know what's going to happen. I think I'd be interested to see if Andraj comes in there and fights a little bit more cautiously early on to try and bring the fight into it. Like, I mean, I think that Lemos is going to be less dangerous as the fight goes on. It'll be interesting to see whether Andraj wants to kind of fight as much on the front foot in the early days of the fight in comparison to maybe rounds 3, rounds 4, rounds 5. We're seeing that a lot more lately, I think, in main events and in the big fights, is that, you know, fighters now, you know, obviously everyone fights to finish, but you also have to have it in the back of your mind that it's a 5-round fight and you have to have something left in the fucking tank as well when you get to those championship rounds. So look, it's an interesting fight. I mean, you know, I'm excited to see it. I genuinely am. I think I'm excited to see Jessica Andrade back at 115. I think it's a good move for her. It's a good addition to the division as well. And that division is hotting up, and I'm looking forward to reading your article on it too, Spencer, when it does come out over the coming days. Excuse me. On to the co-main event. It's 2022, guys, and Clay Guida is in co-main events. What the fuck is going on here? What is going on? The Carpenter is doing the damn thing, so he is. I mean, it's crazy to say it. He's coming in there against Claudio Puelles. And I think, you know, looking at this from the outskirts, I think they're trying to set this up for Puelles against a seasoned veteran, but might be a little bit too much too soon. I mean, Clay Guida has been getting some good wins. He's been on some great runs. He's not like a ball of energy, one of the hardest guys to ever get out of there. I mean, you know, he's only lost to Marco Madsen, Bobby Green recently. Won a split decision, won a unanimous decision. Going in there against Leandro Santos, getting not alone a win, but getting a finish in his last fight was absolutely ridiculous. They tried to do with Santos what they're trying to do with Puelles here, I think, and that's set these guys up to kind of leapfrog a few people in the lightweight division. But fucking hell, I wouldn't like to be going in there and trying to do it against Clay Guida. And I mean, Guida is one of these guys. He's already a Hall of Famer for some of his fights. He's not going to be probably Hall of Famer for his actual career, but I mean, he's just a legend of the game, isn't he, Spencer?
He absolutely is. I mean, 17-15 in the UFC, over 50 fights. We talked a couple weeks ago about Alexei Oleinik being a rare breed and a guy we're not going to see many more like in the UFC. Clay Guida is part of that group, right? He's part of that kind of Jim Miller group of veteran guys that are just still sticking around, have always accepted their limitations, accepted their age, but said, look, I'm still competitive. And so I still want to be here. It may not be the main event. It may not be the biggest names, but I just want to get in there and mix it up. And I'm still a tough out for people. We saw that in the Leo Santos fight, right? Santos had him on skates, had him in a bad spot, and just blew his load, just threw his arms out and had nothing left. And there's Clay Guida, does the Clay Guida thing and just pops up and still has more energy and lets out a burp between rounds and gets back after it. And so I love this fight. I think this is, as you said, kind of a chance to get a read on Claudio Puelles and see where he's at, see if he can maybe jump a couple people in that division, pick up a fifth straight win. Like one of those guys that's been around for a while, but you don't really remember it because it was the Ultimate Fighter Latin America and it was years ago. And I think he was 20 when he started and he was out for a couple of years, but he wasn't ever injured. That was the interesting thing I found in going back and sort of prepping for this. He wasn't injured. It was just kind of always like visas and timing and was kind of hanging out. He's from Peru, so he was at home and just wasn't really all that keen on fighting. It wasn't like itching to get in there like some of these guys are. Like he wasn't busting down Sean Shelby's door to get fights. Finally got out of Peru after COVID started and got to Florida. And then was like, I guess I should fight. I'm here. I'm in shape. Maybe I'll fight. Had two great performances last year. And now he gets a chance to really jump into the middle of the pack here in this division and see what he can do. And this is a big win, right? You beat Clay Guida. We know what that means. It sets a level for you. May not be what it was back in the day, but it still sets a bit of a level for you. And so I'm super interested to see how this plays out. And I'm super interested to hear Harry's thoughts on Claudio Puelles and his knee bar action.
As am I. Like, I mean, look, I didn't mean to downplay Puelles and his chances in this fight because
you should.
There we go. I love it. Well, I mean, he's 1-4 in a row. We saw him getting a good win against Jordan Levitt, who fought last weekend, but I don't think Levitt is too much to write home about. Pretty good-ish grappler, but Harry, you're not convinced. And I'm dying to hear why.
Fucking not convinced, no. Jesus. Look, you know why, Spencer, he wasn't that interested in fighting when he was in Peru? It's because he's not that good.
Because your man's trash.
I'm not going to go that far, right? But genuinely, I go and watch his the Ultimate Fighter performance when he loses to Martin Bravo. His striking is horrendous. Now, clearly, his grappling, and I mean his submission grappling, is pretty solid, right? You can tell if you saw him at a jiu-jitsu tournament, a local jiu-jitsu tournament, he's probably standing on the podium, right? He is quite obviously a jiu-jitsu guy that's tried to bolt on some stuff for MMA. But you then go and watch him against Chris Gratzmacher, and he's not great, you know? His stand-up is pretty horrendous. Everything is just one shot, one shot. Everything is full power. There's no touching. There's very little footwork. There's very little head movement. And the one thing I'll give him is he has some fantastic single leg entries, some fantastic single leg series, some follow-ups from single legs. And when he gets guys down, you can tell the grappling is there.
It's going to be hard to do it against Clay Guida, though, isn't it?
Thank you. It's going to be very hard to do against Clay Guida. The 2 knee bars, I saw 2 knee bars on his record, and absolutely you're right, Spencer. I was like, this fella's fought in the UFC 5 times. How do I not know who he is? I couldn't remember a single fight of his, right? I'll go back and I watch.
That's
and
5 fights since 2016 as well, which is not that active.
Right.
I mean, and a couple of those came last year as well. So, I mean, yeah.
You go back and you look at 2 knee bars. You're like, 2 knee bars on a UFC record? That's interesting. And you go and look at them. They're 2 fucking Hail Mary knee bars, right? Anyone that plays double outside, and for non-jiu-jitsu nerds, double outside is when you have your partner's leg, your opponent's leg, across your far hip, dangling to their foot is on the outside of your body, and both of your legs are on the outside of their body, right? That's a position called double outside. Generally, it's a heel hooking position. That's what Puelles was looking for. Grutzmacher didn't have an ounce of an idea how to defend that position. As soon as Puelles rotated over to start looking for the knee bar, all Grutzmacher had to do was take his right hand, grab Puelles' right hip, pull it up, and he takes his back. There's no knee bar. Everything's grand. He doesn't lose the fight, right? But he didn't, and he gets knee barred. Fine. Horrendous. Anyone that plays double outside in MMA deserves to lose. I'm sorry. It's like in sport jiu-jitsu, it doesn't exist either. In MMA, it really doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist, I'm being harsh, and it doesn't exist because you have no ability to keep your opponent away and you're exposing your back. 2 horrendous things to be doing in MMA, right? Against Clay Guida, fuck me, that's not a great style to have, is it? A single leg on Clay Guida? Really? You think you're going to finish a single leg without getting scrambled on? It's a tough night. I'm sorry. It's a tough, tough night. We saw against the Leo Santos, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I'll close this up quickly. Against the Leo Santos.
Please continue.
Fight. Leo Santos absolutely threw the barn door at him. There is absolutely an argument that the referee could have stopped that fight, right? Guida was taking knee after knee after knee, turtling. There was no intelligent defense there whatsoever. But I think this guy was like, he's Clay Guida. He's probably sound. And he was sound, right? He pops back up, smile on his face. The old head movement's going. The hair's all over the gaff. And what does he do? Leo Santos genuinely looked at him like, how the fuck is this guy still here? And he was still there. And then he murked him. Absolutely murked him. And look, Puelles' cardio isn't great. Even in the Grutzmacher fight, like at the very end there, he looked like he had very little. That knee bar was absolutely a Hail Mary knee bar. But the style that Guida has is just so
It's
tough
amazing
for
at this late stage of his career that he's still coming in and doing the same damn thing that he was doing since he first. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable to look at. I was like, for when he got that win in his last fight, I mean, I was blown away. I was like, this fucking guy, you can still do it. Like, and they're not trying to help him in doing it. They're putting him in with these young killers and these guys that are trying to get a name off it. I mean, you have to give abundance of credit to Clay Guida. I love seeing that shit, man. I love it.
There are athletes, there are martial artists, and then there are fucking fighters. And Clay Guida is a fucking fighter. I'm not having anything other than that. Nothing. I'm not even going to give you any technical breakdown for Clay Guida, because if you don't know who he is, Jesus, what are we doing?
Fucking
you know?
Take a hike, son, if you don't know who Clay Guida is.
Fuck me.
I mean, I just wanted to bask in his amazing, like in the amazing ability he has to still keep it going at the highest level.
I couldn't agree more. I
mean, yeah, like I said, you know what I mean? What is there to break down? We've been watching him for fucking years now. He comes in there, he comes into the octagon like their Energizer bunny. He gets the shit beat out of him by his brother before it gets into the cage. He'll go in there and he'll just go and go and go. He'll sit down on the corner. He'll let a big belch out. He'll go back out again. He'll do the same thing. And it's just amazing to look at. It's a spectacle, so it is. And Clay Guida is a guy that you're going to miss when he eventually does retire.
100%.
You know what I mean? I'm looking forward to this just because Clay Guida is fighting on Saturday night, and that's the truth.
I think he picks up a win.
Yeah, I think he very well could. The thing I'm interested in with Claudio Puelles is I want to see if there is any development. I think all the things you said, Harry, are absolutely true. I also look at the fact that it's a 25-year-old kid that has shown some fundamental pieces that are there as potential building blocks. And he's got a good frame for the division, and he has some athletic potential. And so can he get down to Sanford, work with a really great group, be in a really great room, and pick up some stuff that makes him a better fighter? I do think Clay Guida is a absolutely nightmare matchup for anybody in that position where you're trying to take that next step. And here comes this Tasmanian devil that just isn't going to stop. The other thing with Clay Guida, to me, like, as we've said, of watching him for all of these years, I think for me, for a long time in watching fights, I always think of, okay, well, what's the next step for this person? Are they going to develop this next piece? And can they get to... Clay Guida hasn't developed anything. You can go back and watch his first couple UFC fights, and it is the same dude that we are going to see on Saturday. And yet he's remained consistently competitive. He's remained consistently in the middle of that mix, and sometimes higher, sometimes a little lower. But he, for whatever reason, however he's managed to do it, the dude has made it work with rudimentary kind of basic striking and just
horrendous striking.
Non-stop, no quit energy. Like it's not even necessarily technical. It's just fucking want to.
In some aspects, the best part of his stand-up is his ability to take a shot. And that's not in the right moment.
It shows you how big like heart and want to play a factor in this. And I think it's a thing we don't talk about all that much, right? Like there's not many guys that want it more than Clay Guida. There's tons of better athletes, tons of better strikers, even better wrestlers. No one wants it more than this dude.
And you cannot train hard
fights in the UFC.
Exactly. You cannot train hard or want in the gym. You're either fucking born with that shit or you're not. And I tell you something for nothing, Clay Guida was born with probably enough for 2 or 3 guys. Like it's crazy to think back of all the classic fights that he was in. And he's still up there. Like that Diego Sanchez fight. I mean, oh my God.
It's something that Sean talked about as well, if I can just bolt onto the two things that you guys have just said, is he said his prediction for the next sort of 5 years of MMA is a lot of it is going to be down to toughness, because the acceleration of skill just globally in MMA is so vast and so rapid that eventually everyone's going to know what every position kind of is. There's going to be a base level of MMA where you're not just getting subbed by crazy random shit. You're not getting knocked out by just wild, mad stuff. But it's then going to come down to who's tougher. Who's going to be able to take the damage? Who's going to be able to deal the damage while taking the damage? And Jesus, if Clay Guida was starting MMA now, holy shitballs, do we have a fighter on our hands?
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next fight, guys. Montalo de la Rosa versus Macy Barber. There's 2 people in the UFC, I believe, called the future now. One's Macy Barber and one is Ian Gary. Both of them have been known to talk. We spoke about Ian Gary on this preview show before. We won't dwell on him, but Macy Barber came in to her career talking a big game, saying she was the future, saying she was the next big thing. Then you have a loss to Roxanne Matafedri. You had another loss to Alexa Grasso after that. It's time to cool the jets on Macy Barber a little bit, I think, after those 2 losses. Went in against Miranda Maverick in her last fight, wins a close split decision. Spencer, where do you think that Macy Barber currently stands in her career right now? She's very young too, 23 years of age. I mean, she probably created her own hype in certain aspects, is what I think. And I think she kind of was the master of her own downfall in those regards, because I think, talk a big game, you lose a couple of fights, you're going to be shat on by the fans, your hype goes, but we have to remember that she's still very young in her career. And I think this fight against Montalo de la Rosa is a good stylistic matchup and a good test for her at this stage of her career.
You asked where I think where she stands. I think she's at a crossroads. I think this is absolutely, and I hate saying must win because she is 23, she'll be 24 next month. So I think the piece you said about she created her own problems a little bit is the piece to me that's interesting, right? All the talk about I'm going to beat John Jones and I have the countdown and it's on my this and it's on my that. That ship sailed. She is already older than John Jones was when he won the title. She'll be 24 next month. That part's done. She lost those 2 fights. She had a knee injury. You could argue she lost the fight to Miranda Maverick. So here's a 24, not quite yet 24-year-old fighter who's struggled as of late and is facing an improving and dangerous opponent. And it's just like, it's not must win from a standpoint of you're going to get cut or anything like that, or your career's done or any of those things. But if you're going to be any of these things that you said you were going to be and that a lot of people expected you to be, Saturday is when it has to start showing again. I absolutely love that she's decided to stay put for once and continue training at Team Alpha Male. She bounced around a lot in those first few UFC fights where she was shifting gyms and moving around and just kind of trying to get looks in a bunch of different places. And I understand that, but that's hard for developing chemistry with coaches and building foundations to get better. We just talked about toughness being kind of a deciding factor for fighters going forward. She's tough as they come. She'll get out there and get hit. She's got that part down, but it's the technical pieces. It's the skill pieces that aren't quite there. And if she doesn't start making gains and she doesn't start showing improvements, we're going to be talking about a fighter that's, turns 24 next month and could be 1-3 in her last 4 fights, because this isn't an easy fight. Montana De La Rosa has looked improved throughout each of her last few fights. She too has taken some steps forward, quietly gone 5-2-1 in the UFC. And so this is a big fight for both of these women, but for very different reasons.
Indeed. I mean, looking at Macy, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you too. I think this is a difficult fight, but a fight that she must have at this stage of her career, Harry. Like, you have to ask yourself these kind of questions coming in against Montana. What questions do you think are going to have to be asked when they both step in there on Saturday night?
I'm going to be very vague in my first question, but it's really, where are we? Right? Where are we in the Macy Barber arc? Right? We've said already, and you expertly have pointed out, a 23, 24-year-old fighter has no inclination to be anywhere near the finished article yet, until you pile all the pressure on yourself, right? Now, the Roxanne Modafferi loss, obviously the leg injury happened early. Maybe it was a pre-existing injury that just was, brought about in a more dramatic fashion during the fight. We don't know. We're never going to know. Fine. But you lose that fight, okay.
It papered over a lot of cracks, in my opinion, and it gave Macy Barber an a good excuse too, but maybe I think that loss, it wasn't about the knee injury either. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to...
I agree. The Grasso fight, however, was as fair and square as it's going to get. Now, Grasso is a very, very good fighter. So what we saw in that fight is what we should have seen. Okay, she's 22. It's too soon yet. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. It's not a problem, right? We go back, Miranda Maverick. I scored that fight for Maverick. It was a close fight, don't get me wrong, but I scored it for Miranda Maverick. So yeah, we're looking at 3 straight losses, potentially, right? This fight with De La Rosa, I think, and I was going to touch on the point that Spencer made too, what do we see now with a fighter that's dedicated her time and herself to one specific location? I think whilst it's all well and good to try and follow the Valentina Shevchenko model, where you can go around and you can go to various gyms and get different looks, nobody is Valentina Shevchenko other than Valentina Shevchenko. And I think when you're a fighter that is growing, like Macy Barber is, locating yourself in one place, when you're an expert level fighter, like Shevchenko is, you're not going to grow at the rate that Barber can. You're going to be adding very tiny incremental gains to your game, and different looks with lots and hundreds of different people is going to allow you that. Barber has made the right choice, as we've already said, to knuckle down at alpha male, and we're going to see, can she bolt on the skill acquisition that is needed to take her to the next level? Can we see her add on to the toughness that you guys have already spoken about? If we can, I actually think raw skill for skill, she has everything there. aside from the toughness, she has decent footwork. She tucks her chin now and again. She can throw a straight shot if she really wants to. Her grappling is okay. Everything is kind of there. It just needs melding. But for Montalo de la Rosa, that Barber name still has a bit of shine to it, right? There's still questions there. And if you go in and you blow her out of the water, I mean, I'm taking all that home with me, you know?
Indeed. Like, I mean, all the points that you guys mentioned are so important. I mean, like on another podcast and I've spoken about before, it's just like, it's not just as simple as going in there and fighting. There's so many other different aspects. It's your mental game, like your team you have around you, the gym, you know what I mean? And I think Macy Barber, I hope that she's figured out that side of things as well, because if you don't have your house in check, you're not going to do jack shit when you get inside the octagon, to be honest, in my opinion. It's so important to have the right group of people around you, have the right backing, and like Spencer said, to develop that chemistry and to develop that relationship with your coaches and with your team, and have everybody wanting the same thing. And I don't know if there's other people that was telling Macy Barber this or that early in her career, or was there early success that made her think that way. But I think we need to see it a lot more. And look, at fighting is a game of delusion at times. You know what I mean? You have to kind of, you have to have this mentality that you're going to beat the world or beat everybody in there, and that's okay. You have to have that, but there has to come a time too where you're, and your team will see it, and your coaches will see it more so than everything else. Is when you have to take a fucking check on what you're saying or what you're thinking and come back to reality. And I'm hoping that it works out for Macy Barber, but this is going to be a tough one for her. I mean, where does she go from here? Look, she picked up the close win over Miranda Maverick, but if she doesn't win here, her back is definitely going to be against the wall, and maybe they'll just have to rethink and try to rebuild her altogether. But how many times can you build a broken house, is what they say. But it'll be interesting to see. Does anybody have anything to add? How do you see the fight going down? Do you think she has enough to get it done, Harry?
I'll answer that question, and then I have a question for both of you, if that's okay. Do I think she has enough to get it done? Yeah, I do. I genuinely do. I also think De La Rosa has enough to get it done over Barber as well, right? And that's why I think it's a compelling fight. And one of my favorite fights on the card, actually, just for the storylines coming in and the jeopardy and whatever, especially now that we've lost Manel Cape off the card, and I'm going to go and cry big boy tears in the corner.
Let's have a minute silence. We won't do a minute silence, but let's have a moment silence for the loss of that fight. And we're back.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I definitely think Barber has enough. I think she's aggressive. I think she's tough. I think that she can land, as I've already said, I think she can land shots when she can land them. De La Rosa is crafty. She has some takedowns of her own. She has some great ground and pound when it gets there. But I will pick Barber. And before I took it over, I just want to ask a question. Like, on Macy Barber, right, if we just take a very, very cursory look at her record, right, we've mentioned her age. She had her first amateur fight in 2017. So she's only been fighting 5 years or so, right? Do we think that she was a product of the UFC buying her hype as well as herself buying her own hype? Do we think she was pushed too soon? Or do we think that women's division, when she came into it, was primed for somebody to be pushed too soon?
I think it's the latter that you said. I think that the UFC were really hoping to add new stars into their roster and to try and build someone like Macy Barber, because you know, what they want as a promotion is the full package. They want someone who can go in there and talk the talk, but also go in there and perform when they get into their fights as well. Like, you know, they're lucky enough that they got it with Conor McGregor. We'll probably never see anything close to that again for a long time. I think they have it right now in Khamzat Chimaev. And sometimes, yeah, they might get a little bit caught up in their matchmaking or their push, but I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to the UFC, they'll push one fighter, and if it doesn't work out, they'll go on to the next. So what UFC agendas is can come to the detriment of some fighters sometimes. So, I mean, I'm interested to see or to hear what Spencer has to say about that.
So we'll start with just in terms of the fight itself. I agree with Harry. This is one of those fights that both women can win this fight, and it comes down to me, the development in between their last fights. What growth has Montana De La Rosa had? What growth has Macy Barber had? In terms of kind of what is she a product of, I actually think the piece that we don't talk about enough is that it's just kind of like partially the dearth of competition and opportunities in the women's side of things on the regional circuit. There just aren't that many opportunities for fighters. So when you're in LFA, you're getting good wins and you're getting stoppages. In her second fight, she beats Mallory Martin, who's somebody that, you know, has a little bit of a name and has a little bit of an understanding. People know who she is. And you're fighting on one of the biggest stages in North America in terms of the regional circuit. And then you do look as good as she looked in terms of those efforts. And you have those pieces where your nickname is the future and you're projecting yourself to be the next, you know, beat John Jones's record. It becomes this confluence of opportunities where there's just nothing else for her outside of the UFC. Yes, she can go to Invicta, but Invicta is kind of stalled a little bit here the last few years. And so are you going to go from LFA to Invicta, have a couple fights there, win a belt, and then go up? Sure, maybe that would have been better for her, right? Little more seasoning, a little more. We saw it with Angela Hill. Too early into the UFC, didn't have enough experience, goes down to Invicta, comes back, stalwart in the division. But I think it's more the piece that there just aren't opportunities. There just aren't as many fights. Invicta hasn't been running as many shows. The UFC kind of stripped Invicta of some of its talent. And so the jump is just too great. You go from being, and we see it in shallow divisions too, right? It's not just the women's side of things. Light heavyweight, you get 2 or 3 good wins, and all of a sudden you're facing a top 10 opponent who is just so much better than you and so much more skilled than you and experienced than you. It's that Roxanne Modafferi fight. And so I think it's just a confluence of things that all came together to really kind of do Macy Barber in.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, yeah, I'm curious to see how she puts it all together on Saturday night against Montalo de la Rosa, which moves us on to the next fight, and that's Alexander Romanov versus Chase Sherman. I think I feel bad for both fighters here for different reasons, to be honest, because I feel bad for Romanov that he doesn't get the chance to go in there and take on Tan or Boser. I think that would have been a good fight for him. I feel sorry for Chase Sherman that he took this fight at short notice and he has to fight Alexander Romanov, because I'm pretty high on Alexander Romanov, 15-0 undefeated. This is the last time I think we're going to see him fighting outside the top 15 in some time. I think this guy is going to be making a full head-on charge into the heavyweight division rankings, and I mean, I'm very excited to see it go down. He's a supremely talented fighter, isn't he, Spencer?
I think he is, and I'm surprised there isn't more excitement, kind of more talk about him, especially given that he's a heavyweight, right? Like, we get excited about undefeated prospects, undefeated up and coming talents all the time. Maybe it's because he hasn't fought any big names yet. Maybe it's because, you know, the thing that really sticks out is the Juan Espino fight, where it goes to a technical decision because he gets kicked in the nuts really hard and can't continue. But this is a guy that, like, you get to 15-0. I've said it a lot of times. You don't win 15 straight fights if you're trash. You don't just win 15 fights by happenstance, and 4 of those in the UFC by happenstance. This is a dude, and I talked to Tanner Boser before this fight, and I can't wait to hear Harry's breakdown of this and Harry's thoughts on this. Because talking to Tanner Boser, he's like, look, this dude has takedowns, on setups, on takedowns, on transitions, on weird submissions that nobody else is going to do. And that's intriguing to me, especially in a division where we're not seeing as much of that from people, right? Sure, Alexei Oleinik, outlier, one of a kind. I think he's only 28 as well. Like, it's not like he's some older guy that's really deep in his career and has a lot of miles on him. This is an undefeated 28-year-old in the heavyweight division. Why are we not more excited? Why are we not more pumped up? Like, I too feel bad for Chase Sherman. I'm happy he got a pay raise for getting re-signed and brought back to be a sacrificial lamb. And people are going to shit on it because it's Chase Sherman and Alexander Romanov's probably going to run through him. But, like, this is still a statement opportunity. And regardless of who the opponent is, pay attention to the effort, pay attention to the skills, pay attention to what he's actually doing, and not so much just who it is. And I think more people, or I hope more people, will come away from Saturday excited about this dude, because I think he's interesting. He's super intriguing in this division going forward.
He absolutely is. And I mean, yeah, like, spare the shit talk for Romanov coming in here. He has to fight whoever is put in front of him. And I mean, he wants to fight, he wants to perform, and he wants to showcase his abilities. And there ain't jack shit wrong with that. I mean, for Chase Sherman, fair play to him. He's basically took on this fight because he probably knows he's going to get another maybe 1 or 2 fights after this as a thank you for coming in at short notice here. Spencer mentioned, Romanov's skills, Harry, and the type of skills that we're not used to seeing in the heavyweight division. In good striking, supremely good grappling as well. And the grappling is kind of coming a lot more. Like we've seen in the heavyweight division for years and years and years, and we love to look at it too. Is 2 guys getting in there and just throwing some bombs, and whoever lands, who is going to get knocked out, and wars. We've seen it with Tom Aspinall. We've seen it with the champion Francis Ngannou. We're seeing it with Romanov time and time again. These heavyweights are getting into the grappling realm and they're utilizing their grappling a lot more than we've probably ever seen before. And it's probably a testament to the base level skill in heavyweight fighting and the fact that we're seeing more athletes come into the heavyweight division as well, that we're seeing more well-rounded heavyweights too, that not just these big guys with big bellies that want to knock each other out. And it makes it really exciting. And heavyweight division, which was dormant-ish for a couple of years, is starting to take life again. And I think Romanov is one of the guys that we should be looking out for. Would you agree, Harry?
I would agree, yeah. And I think if I can just give some thoughts on why I think that is. I mean, I think that for the longest time, the heavyweight division has been synonymous with exactly the depiction that you've just said, right? Almost like in a grotesque exemplification of 2 lads. They're massive. They can't be good at fighting. They're like me, right? The archetypal fan, right? They're 2 lads with beards, bit of a belly. They launch lunch boxes at each other. They gas out after 45 seconds and somebody falls over, right? Everyone cheers, throws beer everywhere, has a great time. I think because Romanov, and to your point about Aspinall as well, right? Don't get it twisted. Aspinall's first martial art that he delved in was grappling, right? It was judo, it was jiu-jitsu, it was the gi, it was, all of these things, and we've seen it, right? I think grappling in heavyweight is far less sexy to the overall audience than 2 massive lads swinging and banging. Romanov is an absolutely different style of heavyweight grappling than we've ever seen. It's very catch wrestling mixed with Eastern European grappling, right? The transitions, as you say, they're unorthodox. You don't just find them in a regular North American wrestling school or even sort of a British grappling school. You don't see it, right? You don't see the levels of transitions. You don't see the upper body to lower body transitions. You don't see the way he pins his hips in interesting ways. You don't see the way he takes arms away from ribs and elbows and isolates this and shoves a forearm in your man's face and is like, what now? You just don't see these sorts of transitions, and it adds a new breath of life into the division. It adds a new breath of life into what's possible in the lexicon of heavyweight MMA. And I think that's important just from a global overall standing of what heavyweight MMA is. I think the Aspinalls and the Romanovs are very important to show that there is more. There is more to this than sitting back after on an outside heel hook in a championship fight, right? There's more. And I know he didn't actually sit back. I know I'm being facetious, but there is more that is to offer. And with Romanov, is he going to be the top level? We're not going to find out in this fight against Chase Sherman. We're not. Chase Sherman knows what he is, and fair play to him for doing so. He's going to come in, he's going to get paid, and he is likely getting submitted in the first round. And he's, as you rightly said, fair play to him. He's probably going to get another 2 or 3 fights as a thank you, but he's not going to go much further than that. Let's see what happens after this fight, right? Let's see what Romanov gets matched up with after this fight. Do we see him against a slightly more, a better name? Do we see him against a ranked fighter? Who do we see him against? Do we see him, who fell out of this fight? My head's gone blank.
Tanner Boser.
Right. Let's see that fight, right? Let's see the Tanner Boser fight and see where he is. Let's see a Dorcas, right? Let's see that kind of level, and let's see what we've got from him. Do you think, guys, the fact, he's outside of the top 15, a win over Tanner Boser might have seen him sneak in? You think the fact that fight has kind of fallen out, that he might have to maybe win another fight? I hope not. I hope he gets in. Rankings don't mean shit.
I know they don't. I know they don't mean shit, but you know, you want to look at flashy and you want to put that number beside his name. They'll use it for hype. They'll use it to sell fights. I mean, I can't see Romanov fighting without a number beside his name. I think that is probably going to happen. I think it would have happened if he had to beat Boser. I think it's still going to happen if he beats Chase Sherman, who's
I think
unranked,
we do
but still a
European heavyweight championship fight with him and Marcin Tybura and just see where everybody stands.
Yes, let's have some fun, Jack.
Or let's see him and Spivak.
Yeah, something like that, right? Another guy that's on the come up, that needs another fight, that needs another opportunity. Like, I don't think you necessarily hustle him into the top 10 against a super established name or somebody that people are going to get really excited about. The Dawkins fight is interesting to me. You mentioned Dawkins. That's interesting to me because I think there are questions now about Chris Dawkins and where he fits.
Exactly.
And whether that was too much too soon, or did we just kind of make too much of some of those performances? But I do think he's a guy that the next fight needs to be somebody that's in that lower third of the top 15.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. That's what I would love to see. Which brings us on to the opening fight of the main card. And by Jesus, this is a banger, guys. Whew. Stop the lights. Okay, I have to readjust myself for this. Charles Jourdain versus Lando Vannata. Vannata coming down to 145 pounds. Charles Jourdain, just a really grit your mouth. You talk about heart and you talk about wanting to win. Charles Jourdain has that. He has that, and we've seen that time and time again. We've seen it in the fight against Andrade. The gif or the video that's been doing the round since that fight is that classic Spartan kick where he just puts him on his ass towards the end of the round and then just like grits his teeth and just seeing that motion and that raw passion and that wanting to win. That's what I love seeing in a fighter. And Charles Jourdain, he definitely has it. With Lando Vannata coming down to 145, it's going to be an interesting move down. And you know, he's a guy who is a flashy striker, but his output sometimes isn't where it should be. And I'm interested to see what it's going to be like after cutting another 10 pounds. Is he going to be hoping that he's going to have the power advantage here and look to try and land that shot? Is yet to be seen. I mean, Spencer, just give me your thoughts overall on this fight. A really great fight to open up the main card.
So yeah, absolutely love the fight, right? This is one of those ones that there's no way it's not entertaining. All the things you said about Charles Jourdain, I feel the exact same way. Plus he's Canadian. I'm in. Sold. That's all I need. Lando's a guy that I've known for a number of years now, guy that I've always been really high on, like a lot of people. It feels crazy that he's still only 30 because his, fight with Tony Ferguson is now that long ago that it feels ages ago, but he's still only 30. I like this move down for him. I thought he looked good in the fight with Mike Grundy. I thought we saw some stuff in that fight that tells you a little bit of what he can do when he's, it sounds trite, but when he's fully locked in, when he's fully committed. Lando's a guy, and he'll be the first to tell you this if you talk to him. Kind of got by a little bit on natural ability, having some fun, like to get in a scrap, happy to go out there and mix it up. And we just see what happens. And kind of bought into his own hype a little bit and kind of enjoyed the rub that came with that Tony Ferguson fight, right? A lot of hadn't won any fights in the UFC, and everybody's talking about him as a future contender and a potential star and all of these things. And then it didn't really work out, right? You look back at the start of his UFC career and it's pretty hit or miss. And it's not great, but it's also not terrible. And then he decides, I need to settle in. I need to get serious about it. I'm going to 45 because I can make that weight, no problem. I think we see the best version of him that we've seen in a long time on Saturday, because you can't fuck around with Charles Jourdain. He's a guy that if you go out there and you try to just get in a slug fight with him, right? He puts you on your ass. He did it to Duo Choi in South Korea. Goes over there. Duo Choi finally back from his military service, and Charles Jourdain puts him on his ass in the middle of the cage in his comeback fight at home. So I think we see a great fight here. I think we get a super entertaining fight. I also will not be surprised at all if we see Lando Venata grapple and turn this into a wrestling match and just decide, you know what? I have no need to stand there with you because I know you want to fight, but I'm going to put you on the ground and I'm going to show people that I can be a force in this division. And I think he can. He's a guy that I want to see face a top 15 fighter by the end of this year.
Indeed. It was like, it always to me looked like Lando Venata, like you mentioned, Spencer, was a guy who obviously has an abundance of natural ability, who maybe has not found the right commitment to get those abilities right to where he needs to get them. Maybe it was fighting bigger guys. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. Now, the move down to 145 kicked off well for him. He has a chance to kind of build on that now, Harry, against Charles Jourdain. But, I mean, it's a crazy fight. Jourdain is a guy who likes to fight on the front foot. He's going to be coming at him hammer and tong. Venata, I think, you know what, and I didn't really think of it that way. I think what Spencer said, and I think what you're going to say, his route to victory is going to be the grappling here, because you don't want to be taking any chances against Charles Jourdain here, because he has power to hurt you.
Absolutely. Look, to me, and I'm going to make a strange comparison, stick with me, and hopefully I'll get there. Venata feels a little bit like he was the 155, now the 145 Donald Cerrone, right? If he turns up, if in that changing room, when he's putting those gloves on and he's getting that shirt on, if he's like, I'm going to fucking win tonight, he goes out there and he looks fantastic. If he gets in and he's putting his gloves on and he's like, I reckon I could climb out the bathroom window and nobody would notice, he's going to get murked. You know, and we've kind of seen that, as you alluded to, sort of some of the performances. He doesn't really throw a lot. He doesn't really look like he's there. Doesn't quite look like he's mentally there. Doesn't feel like he really wants to be there. He's not flowing. He's not doing the things that he usually does. He doesn't have the versatility. He's not showing the looks. It's not awkward. It's not. But when he's on, he's on. And there is something, as much as I despise weight cutting, right? And, you know, this is something we could talk about another day. There is something to a fighter forcing themselves to be more committed and more focused than before. In order, you have to turn up to practice, because if you don't turn up to practice, you're not going to lose the weight. You have to put everything into practices, because if you don't, you're not going to lose the weight. And if you don't do those things, if you do those things, you'll get some sense of achievement by, one, stepping on the scale at a different weight class, but two, by making sure and knowing in your soul and in your heart that you've put the work in. Nobody goes out there and beats Mike Grundy if you can't grapple. Grundy's last performance against Mr. Finland and Makwan Amirkhani, look, these things happen, right? If you play front headlock with Makwan Amirkhani, you're playing with fire and you're going to get burnt. But we know, as the three of us on this podcast, we know that Mike Grundy is a fantastic grappler and is not a bad fighter, right? Venata went out there and had a great performance. If you're standing across the cage from Charles Jourdain, you grapple him from moment 1 to moment 15. You do not stop, right? And something that Venata has and has in spades when he shows it is versatility, right? Let's see weird and wonderful angles. Let's see shots. Let's see wrestling from different positions. Let's see head and arm stuff. Let's see elbows on the break. Let's see awkward uppercuts. Let's see weird leg kicks. Let's see all of it. Let's make Jourdain guess. Because if you don't and you allow Jourdain to step forward and step forward and step forward and find his rhythm, he's going to put you away.
Now we're going to end up with a repeat of the Arnold Allen should grapple Dan Hooker, and he goes out and throws the kitchen sink at him and knocks him out inside of 30
Very probable. I mean, look, I stand by that. If Arnold Allen had decided to grapple, he wouldn't have had the eye problem.
Agreed.
Did you watch? No, we're fucking starting this now.
Yep,
Did you watch the video, the vlog that he put out after that fight where he was breaking down what happened? Anyone watch it?
No, I haven't watched it.
No.
I watched him eating a bunch of food around town.
I did. In that, he was sat down. It was like 3 days after the fight, right? 4 days after, maybe he uploaded it, whatever. He sat wherever he sat. I can't remember. And he said the reason why he fought like that is because he stepped in too early on a shot. Hooker smacked him in the eye and he couldn't see anything. So he was like, fuck. I know a way to find out where he is. Hit him. He went for the Justin Gaethje. I'm blind, but I'm not blind if I hit him. So he was like, fuck it. I'm just going to throw. And he showed the shot that hit him, and he was like, from this point on, I can't see. There, in the vlog, he said he still couldn't see out of his left eye, right?
Was
Game
that the
plan's
one that
got
put him down onto his knee, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when game plans go out of the window, is when you go fucking blind in a fight, right? You don't think about double legs and, changing levels and penetration steps when you can't fucking see. So I stand by my fucking point.
So do I. We all made the same read. I'm just saying, here we are saying from minute 1 to minute the end of it, Lando Venata's got to come out and just grapple Charles Jourdain.
It's going to be wheel kicks only.
Yeah, it just feels like it's now going to be handshakes in the back. Let's go out and sling for 15 minutes.
Harry Powell will defend his honor when questioned, is what we found out tonight.
Fucking all alone.
We're going to move on to the prelims card now, guys, and I'm going to scoot down to the very bottom on the opening fight of the prelims, which has some Irish interest, obviously, with the UFC debut of Dean Barry, as he gets ready to take on Mike Jackson in the 170-pound division. Right. It's a strange one for me, to be honest. I am looking forward to seeing Dean in there. I'm excited to see the tricolors in there in the octagon again. I welcome it. But to me, this is a showcase fight for Dean Barry and nothing else, only a showcase fight for Dean Barry, for him to go in there and to put on a performance and to knock somebody out. Like, Mike Jackson is not a guy who is training full time. He does some media work. He was in there and he fought CM Punk, must have been 3 years ago now, 2018, I believe that fight was in. I mean, I'm more curious to see what's next for Dean Barry rather than what's going to happen on Saturday night, because, he has the ability to go in there and knock Mike Jackson out, and he should go in there and knock Mike Jackson out, and that's about as much as we can say. That's about as much as I can say for the breakdown of the fight. I mean, that's what Dean has to do. That adds its own bit of pressure to Dean as well. Fighting at 170 now, he says he wants to move down to 145. I can't see him getting down there that quickly. I'd imagine his next fight will be at 155. If he even gets down further than that, it will be interesting to see. I'm interested to get your guys' perspective on this fight. I'm interested to hear your opinions on Mike Jackson getting another call. And so I'll go to Spencer first. What are your thoughts on this fight? And your thoughts on Mike Jackson getting another crack at it, and also your thoughts on Dean Barry as a fighter as well.
I'm stunned that Mike Jackson got another fight. And truthfully, kudos to him and Dean Barry for putting this fight together kind of themselves, just kind of chirping at each other and getting it organized. And like, listen, all the credit in the world to Mike Jackson for taking those steps. And also, if you're going to, be mad that Mike Jackson is fighting in the UFC again, don't begrudge him. Any fighter in the world is going to accept that phone call. Every fighter is going to sign that contract and take the UFC's money and step in that octagon. Whether you think they are deserving of that opportunity or not does not matter. It's not on them. The UFC offered him an opportunity. He said yes. Everyone else would do it. So leave them both the fuck alone about that. I think it's crazy that he's getting another opportunity. He looked not great against Mickey Gall. He looked not great in beating CM Punk. And then he popped for weed, I think. And so that got overturned. And I thought that was going to be the end of the line, right? That was going to be the UFC's ability to just have a clean out and say, you know what, we're just done here. But he gets the opportunity again. I think it is, as you said, a showcase fight for Dean Barry. But man alive, if it's not, what do we do? What happens? I don't know enough about Dean to sort of know. I know from you guys and from a little bit of Monday that there's a Taekwondo background. There's a ton of combat sports experience. Mm-hmm. He does have 3 straight wins coming into this, all by finish. So he should, in theory, be able to go out here and put it on Mike Jackson and probably get him out of there pretty quick. The weight class change is interesting to me. The size difference and size shift is interesting to me. but it should be a showcase fight for Dean Barry, who seems to be somebody that, at least when you're looking at it just from these two guys, has the greater potential future going forward.
Indeed. Like, I mean, just a bit of history on Dean, multi-time Waco kickboxing world champion, expert, like really, really good, solid striking. Has admitted himself he needs to work on the grappling. He's found his home at Team Rhino under Andy Ryan in Ireland. A good gym, a good all-round gym, not just grappling, but some good hard-nosed fighters in there, and a really great coach in Andy Ryan as well. But I mean, you know, all that grappling work, I think we're not going to see any of it. I think this is probably going to be a striking match. If anyone is going to try and take it down, maybe Jackson will, after getting a few smacks into the mouth. But I really think that anything, and maybe I'd be curious to ask Dean this later on. I think anything other than a sensational knockout win is going to be a disappointment here for Dean Barry. And I think he has more than enough ability with the skills that he has right now. Obviously, a 4-1, he is a long way to go, and a lot of work to do to get to where he wants to get. But, you know, going in on Saturday night is talking about this fight. He has the skills to get there. He needs to go in there and get a knockout. And I think Mike Jackson is the perfect opponent to do that. In all honesty, he did not, like Spencer said, didn't offer all too much in his previous two fights. And I also agree with you too, Spencer, as well, is that it's not these guys' fault. This fight is going on. The UFC put it on, so of course they're going to fucking fight it. And I mean, you can't blame either one of them for doing that. And I'm never going to do that. And you know, I hope Dean goes in there and puts on a good performance, and I hope he does get his UFC win, and I hope we get to see him lift the tricolors up there. But the big question for me is what next after that, because then I think after this fight, we're going to have some big tests coming Dean's way. Harry, I'd just like to get your assessment on the fight and on the overall landscape of this fight and the fight itself.
So the fight itself, I'm going to sum it up in a couple of words. It's a professional fighter against a part-time media member. That's it. Do you know what I mean? You know, I'm not being rude to Mike Jackson at all. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just saying how it is. Mike Jackson is not a full-time fighter. He's 37 years old. Yes, he has fight experience in other sports, boxing and Muay Thai and whatever. But Dean is a professional fighter. He is training daily. This is his sole focus. He's been out to a variety of different gyms. He's gotten different looks. He has a very storied, very successful kickboxing background. This should not be close. This is a lose-lose fight for both of them. If Mike Jackson goes in and beats Dean Barry, he takes what? Some shine, and the UFC are going to do what with him? Put him against someone else, and he's going to get murked. If he loses, he was supposed to lose. If Dean Barry goes in and wins, he was supposed to win. If he goes in and loses, he's a horrendous fighter all of a sudden, right? So I don't like the matchup from that perspective, from an overall overarching perspective of the fight and its position on both of the guys' careers, because you touched on it earlier. If Dean goes in there and absolutely blasts him out in, let's say, 2 minutes, right? Couple of head kicks, lands a spinning kick, puts him away. The UFC now have a highlight reel on a guy that's had 6 fights. And 6 fights against not the stiffest of competition. And as we know from Dean's career, that is largely not his fault. He's had a ton of pullouts, and he's taken the fights that were available to him. Fine.
All those previous, like, you know, there's been a lot of talk about that. That's not Dean's fault. Dean has a living to make. He has a family to raise and stuff like that. He's got to take those fights. You know what I mean? You 100%. Don't fight, you don't make money. And,
absolutely.
And the UFC have come look for Dean as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
They came. There was talks it was supposed to happen last year. We had some visa issues. They've made it happen here. You know, one way or another, the UFC are looking and they see something in Dean Barry, and I can kind of see what they see as well. But I mean, what you see and what you get sometimes is completely different, and you're going to have different challenges along the way. And I think I mean, there's not going to be too much challenges coming Dean's way on Saturday night. I think, Harry, for you, what you said is that it's the opportunity for Dean to go in there and showcase his striking, and he will throw some flashy shots. You will see some flashy striking in there. You will see some beautiful shots from Dean Barry. He's very, very good to look at on the feet. Yeah, I mean, his opposition is not up to scratch, and I think I think Dean wins this fight, but on the other end, for Mike Jackson, win or lose, I don't think we see Mike Jackson in the UFC ever again after on Saturday night. I think that's about it.
I think the one, and this is maybe an egregious comparison, but what's your man's name that beat Adesanya in kickboxing? Alex Pereira.
Alex Pereira.
Right, Alex Pereira. Like, Alex Pereira went in there against a relative nobody and got taken down a couple of times, right? We saw that. Now, that guy was also a professional fighter, but he got the finish. That's fine. And the highlight reel has been played, and the UFC allowed him a slow roll, even though he's a little bit older. Dean Barry's only 29, right? But to your point, I'm going to ask you this question. It's likely that he goes in and gets a highlight reel finish, but the people that watch that Pereira fight is like, oh, okay, his takedown defense isn't fantastic, as it wouldn't be as a lifelong kickboxer. But what does happen for Dean Barry next? If, let's say, he drops to 155, who do you put him with next? Who do you put him with?
I don't know. I mean, that's the big question for me. Like, I don't have anyone. I think, like, sometimes, like, it's curious to me because there's not as much buzz around for this fight. I think the reason for that is because the fight, as we all said, is a little bit predictable. We know what to expect, and I think what adds what adds the most intrigue about fights are the questions that we ask. Like, we come on here every week and we ask questions. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? Well, I mean, there's not too many questions in here. I think the questions and the big questions are going to come for Dean Barry in his next fights, and that's what has me intrigued. That I'm excited to see how he goes in there. We are going to see Dean Barry getting taken down in the UFC. We are going to see him on his back. There's no doubt about that. But how he responds, or how he can get back up, or what we see after that, those are the questions we don't have, and those are the questions that we want. And I don't think we're going to find any of those answers on Saturday night. And it'll be interesting to see what the UFC. I don't want to see him thrown to the wolves. You don't want him to get the Reese McKee treatment, and by the very reason because of that, we're seeing on Saturday night he's not being thrown to the wolves. He's been thrown into a very winnable fight, which in my view makes me think that the UFC see him as a very marketable fighter, and they wanted to kind of match him correctly. But as well, we're not talking about a guy in his early 20s here. We're talking about a guy in his late 20s that is going to have to fight 2 or 3 times this year, and he's going to have to fight 2 or 3 times again next year. And he doesn't have that much time on his hand to really develop before he gets the chance to move up the rankings. If he does get that chance, I mean, who do you put him in there next? I don't know. I honestly don't know now at this stage. I mean, I put him in there with a striking, heavy, full-time mixed martial artist next in the lightweight division. Someone that's maybe coming off the Contender Series or something like that.
That's what I was going to say too. Somebody coming off the Contender Series, or some newcomer that has had a couple good wins over middling competition, let's say, on the regional circuit, right? Somebody from one of the shows that turn up on Fight Pass. So James Krause's FAC, Battlefield up here in Canada, whatever it may be, Unified in Alberta, stuff like that. Somebody that isn't necessarily super experienced. And if we're going from just recent fighters, Jordan Levitt looked not great last week. They're going to be on a similar trajectory. I'd watch that fight. Yes, it's grappler versus striker. But to what Ian's saying, Dean doesn't have a ton of time where you can give him these favorable matchups time and again. He's got to show some stuff kind of out of the gate. And so you put him in there with a guy like Jordan Levitt that, doesn't have a lot to offer on the feet and doesn't even really have that much of an entry game in terms of his takedowns, right? So it's going to be on Dean Barry to make a mistake and be close to him if that ends up being a matchup. So somebody like that you can get a little bit of a little bit of buzz, right? There's a couple highlights that Jordan Levitt has that you can show over and over. Ideally, you get one from Dean this weekend. Someone in that range to me, because you don't want to just hustle him out there against a Clay Guida or against a Jim Miller or somebody that's just so experienced that all of those gaps, all of those holes in his game are going to be shown, and you're just going to waste the opportunity to see what this guy has going forward.
Indeed, it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes down. And look at, like I said at the start, it's great to see some Irish guys in the UFC again. And hopefully Dean goes in there, does the business, and we move on to the next one, because that's about where we're at with this fight, I think. Let's look at some other fights on the prelims. And Harry, I'm going to give the floor to you, man, and I'm going to let you break down one or two fights that you're looking forward to on the prelims.
Absolutely. So my two fights that I'm looking forward to is Jordan Wright, Marc-Andre Barrio. I think for as long as that lasts, that'll be a ton of fun. Barrio has had some interesting changes in his style, like the Unjikani fight. You go out there, you get cracked once inside 16 seconds, and these things do happen in MMA. But I thought the win against Abu Azaitar was a good win. I thought the Dalchi Yangiambula fight was good. He's a tough guy to deal with, and he dealt with him very well. Jordan Wright is just a guy that I like spinning kicks. Okay, what can I say? I like them, so I like Jordan Wright. The Ike Villanueva has had a tough old run in the UFC, hasn't he? Jesus Christ, the poor bastard.
What the fuck did he do to the matchmakers?
And the worst part of it is that he is the sweetest, nicest man that you could ever come across, too. Like, just a wonderful human being that is just constantly send to the wood chipper.
I mean,
but one win in his last five, Harry, has a loss against Chase Sherman.
Exactly.
Coming in against Tyson Pedro here, it's another tough one again.
And that was my second fight, right? Tyson Pedro, it feels as though he has far more fights than 7-3, right? It really does. And then can we just take a very, very quick look at his record? At 4-0, he's fighting Khalil Roundtree, right? At 5-0, he's fighting Paul Craig. At 6-0, it's fucking Alir Latifi. Like, what are we doing to this man? Like, Jesus. I think Ike Villanueva, I feel sorry for him, but he's got more losses than Pedro's got fights. But anyway, as long as that lasts as well, that's going to be a fun fight. Pedro's got a lot of room to grow. He is 30, but he's in the higher weight classes, so that longevity is a lot more spaced out.
That win over Paul Craig looks damn good now. Obviously,
it does look damn good now. I mean, even the win against Khalil Roundtree looks pretty good now.
I can't believe you haven't mentioned the Kimura.
I mean, look, the Kimura is disgusting, but yeah,
it's a lovely finish.
It is a lovely finish.
I get it's not against the most high level competition, and like you can see it coming, and I can see it coming, and I've never grappled a day in my life. Right. But it's still a lovely finish. It's a lovely transition into the finish.
It is a lovely finish. It is. But look, yeah. I mean, the fact that he got armbarred by Oben St. Preux makes me shake my head in lots and lots and lots of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my two fights, and I really like.
Before I move it over to Spencer, talk to me a little bit. Maybe you're moving on to this about Cameron Nelson and his chances against Arikulang. I knew I was going to butcher that.
So we will. I'm going to say off podcast, Ian absolutely smashed his name out of the park because I had no idea. And now, obviously,
I butchered it as I do. I get it perfect off camera, and then I buckle under the bright light, guys. But look, everyone will get used to it, and maybe I'll get better. But I won't beat myself up over it. Yeah.
So with Cameron Else, it's interesting, right? Like I watched him compete. I watched his fight against Damo Whedon at Cage Warriors. He has a win over Aiden James, who I'm pretty high on. The loss to Kyler Phillips. I mean, look, Kyler Phillips is a good fighter. and sometimes you go in there and you lose. He's had a loss against Ed Arthur, who's a great regional guy. I don't really know where he is. He's a guy, again, I think we talked about this off podcast. He talks a massive game online, says a lot of things online, but I'm yet to see it in his actual professional performances. He's found himself at Jackson Wink now. So, we know that Jackson Wink are a team that can put together a game plan, and they can bolt on tools to a fighter that already has them. I think my question is, does he already have them? So we'll see. The Mongolian murderer.
I thought Kyler Phillips is a tough enough debut for him as well.
100%.
Phillips is a really good fighter as well. So
that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, he has a chance to come in here now and get a win and get his UFC career off the ground, really. And I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. He got some big fucking power. Likes to go. He really starts like on the front foot and on the attack straight away. And I think you're going back and you're looking at whether it's knockouts, whether it's submissions. He likes to just get in there. He doesn't like getting paid by the hour, as they say.
Well, all of his finishes are round one. All of them.
So, I mean, yeah, that's going to be an interesting fight. Spencer, anything else? I'm looking at Philip Linz moving down to the 205 division for the first time. I'm looking forward to seeing him there. I thought he was a little bit undersized for the heavyweight. I think this is a good move for him, isn't it?
Yeah, it's back down. He fought in Bellator at 205 and just kind of went to PFL, had that opportunity to be in their heavyweight season, their first one, when there wasn't as Harry said earlier, no disrespect to anybody that I'm saying this about, but there wasn't a lot of talent in that first season. And he just timed things right, that he goes forward, beats a bunch of guys that are former middleweights and light heavyweights, and Jared Rochold and Josh Copeland, guys that washed out of the UFC, gets himself $1 million and away you go. This is the division he should be in. It makes the most sense. I know he's had some health issues and he's had some pullouts in the last couple of fights. So I hope everything's okay. I hope everything's online. We'll see on Friday when he gets on the scale that everything's right. But this is where he should be, and I want to see what he can bring to the table. Marcin Prachnio has looked good in his last couple of fights, had that win over Khalil Roundtree, and then got a finish over your boy, like Villanueva, with a body kick. You're giving me the head shake of looked good. Like, he's looked better than when he was getting lamped in the first round.
I just mean poor Ike Villanueva.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I mean.
That's
Every lad on this card has beaten him. Every single one.
Yeah. The couple of fights that Harry touched on are ones that I'm interested in as well. As he said, the Jordan Wright fight, it's 3 minutes or less. He's had 15 fights. Only 4 of them have gone more than 3 minutes. So you're not spending a lot of time watching that fight. I will be really surprised if Marc-Andre Barrio doesn't come out just trying to get after him. Because that's like, I know you don't want to be that guy and that's not your normal style. But this is a kid that you just chase down, put him against the fence and hit him in the face and your night's done. You get 2 checks. And then the Cameron Else fight with Arikiling, like Arikiling moving up after 2 fights at flyweight where I thought he looked okay. Good start against Jeff Molina, got tired. I thought he won the fight against Cody Durden. So I'm interested to see if going up, get a little bit more of that gas tank and he can just kind of get after it a little more. Cameron Else, he's an absolute question mark to me, because you look at the resume and you look at some of the names and you guys know them better than me. But even I know that the Aiden James win is a good win. Obviously, Paddy Pimblett's in there. And I think there's someone else. Did he beat Dylan Tuke at one point? Was that the other kind of semi-name that he's beaten at one point? So, like, Dylan's a tough kid, had some problems, but he's sorting it out. But, like, as Harry said, talks a huge game. Tell you anytime you ask him, and even when you don't, that he is terrific. Let me see it. Let me see you go out there against this guy that's nicknamed the Mongolian Murderer and see what you can do against him. And then the other one, Tyson Pedro, 3 years away, more than 3 years away. All kinds of knee problems. Kind of had the Dominic Cruz thing of the ligament replacement. Didn't take, had to get another one. Still only 30. Showed some progress. As you guys said, the Paul Craig win looks terrific. The Khalil Roundtree win still looks good. Let's see what you can do when you come back against poor Ike. Poor Ike getting fed out there again. Sorry, Ike.
Poor Ike. He'll be having like post-traumatic stress walking around UFC fight week, looking at all the guys on this card that have beaten him already. But hopefully, I don't know. It's probably going to go bad for him again. Let's be real on this night as well. But that rounds us up for this week's preview show. It has been a pleasure as always to be with the two guys. Thanks to everybody for listening. Head on over to Twitter and to Instagram and follow Spencer Kite at Spencer Kite. Follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell. Go check out his stuff on Severe MMA. Sign up for the Speaker's Corner on the Patreon, one of the best podcasts that's out there right now. Sign up to Spencer's Keyboard Kimura, giving you something to care about on each and every fight, every single week. The guy's doing some great things. Follow me at O'Neill MMA. Check out my stuff on SevereMMA.com and over on Patreon as well. Thanks to everybody.
Don't follow Sean Sheehan.
Don't bother Sean. He didn't show up today. He left us high and dry. He might not be welcome next week because of it. We'll see. We'll have some negotiations. We'll talk about it. Maybe if he's nice, we might let him back. I don't know. I had fun tonight though, guys. I had fun with you guys. So it was great. It was great. Before we go, as I dropped one of the nicest protein bars of all time, eatallreal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA. Get yourself 15% off all real nutrition bars. We'll be back next Thursday to do it all over again. Once again, thank you to the guys. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Good luck.